Okay, I wanted to finish up this lecture with two major points about concession and argument, and then go back to sort of what's going to be coming up and what's due. So a concession is to give something away, and we talked about this already in class, but it's really important that you at some point in the paper, especially the research paper, concede something so that you can bring your audience closer to your viewpoint. It increases your credibility with your audience, and you can use a dependent clause structure to do this if you want to do a quick one, which I can show you. So these are dependent. The first one's a dependent clause structure. So I'm pretending like I'm doing the research paper on racial profiling in airports. So if I say, even though terrorist attacks on airplanes can carry a large death toll and are therefore attractive targets for terrorists, so I'm conceding that, then I'll say they are not common events. So I'm trying to make a point that the fear in which sets up these kinds of racial profiling scenes are not warranted. And so that's one way to concede. Another way is if you want to slow it down a bit and say, you know, it's true that many recent terrorist attacks have been associated with Islamic extremists, so you're conceding that. And then you say, however, the majority of Muslims are peace-loving citizens, so racially profiling them is not efficient. You know, I'm not talking about the moral part of it, but just not efficient. And so that slows it down into 3 steps, but it's also a way to concede. And that second way was closer to what we would call a counter-argument. So counter-arguments are where you take on the opposition's viewpoint that they have about some aspect of your argument, and you deal with that opposition, and you then go back onto it. So what I mean by that, well, we'll get to what I mean by it in a second. So counter arguments do enhance your ethos, your credibility, because it makes it very clear to your reader, sort of like that you're balanced in your view. You've thought through these other things from the other side, but then you disagree for some reason. And then it also helps readers understand where your objections are, and kind of understand sort of why you disagree. So the counter argument has this step where it says you turn against your argument to challenge it, and then you turn back to reaffirm it. So these are 2 examples of what you could do. Include 1 or 2 more disadvantages or practical drawbacks to what you're proposing, and then say, like, okay, but this is why it's still important, right? So you can have a counter argument you take on, and then you go back and you address it. So a second way is an alternative explanation or proposal that makes more sense. You could say, well, but this is what we should do, and this is why, and that is an effective way to set up an argument. Where can you put it? You can put it a lot of different places. It just depends upon your goal. If you are feeling like you're writing to a very hostile audience, you may want to put it right in your introduction, and then maybe even have a whole paragraph on it. So you can put it in the intro before your thesis, so you get both sides. You can have a section or a paragraph just after your intro where you kind of lay out this expected reaction before developing your own. You can say, you know, I know how you're feeling about this, and these are the issues, you know, however, and then you kind of go back onto why you still believe it to be true. You could also do one like as a quick move within a paragraph. You imagine a counter argument, not to the main, like not to your warrant, not to your main belief or idea, but to a sub idea that the paragraph is arguing. So for instance, if you were arguing that the problem with these, one of the problems with these cases of shootings is that people have toy guns, and it's not an officer's fault if they shoot someone who has a gun that looks real, that looks like a threat, and of course they have to defend themselves. And so you could like say, yes, you know, like it's clear that is an issue. And then you could say, however, many of these cases that have happened with police officers happen in open carry states, which means it's legal for people to carry guns. So if that's the case, how do officers then approach when someone has a gun? What kinds of things are they then coping with if they do have some sort of racial bias? So that's just one idea. You can also use it before the conclusion towards the end and that's more if it's not as important, but you want to make sure you've addressed it before you finish. But use it sparingly. Don't use it in all of these places. Probably just choose one or two that would work for you. Here's a counter-argument example. The claim, behavioral profiling has proven effective for identifying suspected terrorists. This is different than racial profiling, like how people are behaving in the airport. So that's the claim. The counter-argument, the step one. It may be tempting then to combine ethnic and behavioral profiling in airports, right? So you turn against this claim. And then the counter-argument, step two. However, research proves that it's not necessary to use ethnic profiling. In fact, since terrorists often don't have criminal records and know they may be profiled, they tend to go to great lengths to alter their physical appearance in airports. And then you're kind of setting up why. So you turn against a point that comes up, and then you turn back to it. Okay, so for the Foothill Library database, there's a couple of options. You can go to the website itself and click on it, or within Canvas, there's a library tab. So I'm going to go into Canvas so you can see how it works. So if we log into Canvas, and we log into your site, and we scroll down to library, and then from here we click on A to Z database list, and from here you want to go to Academic Search Premier, this one. Okay, once you're in here, you want to hit Advanced Search. You want to type in your area that you're interested in, and you're going to use a lot of different keywords. Remember that. Like, you're going to try a bunch of different ways of doing this. I put in racial profiling and driving just for fun, just so you can see. If you want to just find your 2 peer-reviewed journals which are required, you can click peer-reviewed journals. If you want to just do a general search first, you can. But you want to make sure this is set up full text so that you don't get summaries, you get the actual articles. So there's 30 articles, which is a reasonable number to kind of breeze through. This I've seen before, it's a good article. Let's say you wanted it, you would click on it then. You want to look at it more. The PDF full text view, this shows you the article. Takes a few minutes, there we go. And then over here, you can email it to yourself, you can print it if you're at a printer. You can, the cool part though I wanted to let you know is that you can click this button and cite it. And what's nice about this, it's super cool, is that you can then just cut and paste here into your works cited page. So it does the citation for you. Okay, so so that's sort of how this works. It sets up ways for you to find things. Now let's say you go there and it says like 3,000, things. You can come over here and click on just scholarly journals. You can narrow the date range of something to exclude other articles. So now I have 14 instead of 30. Depending upon what you want to do, if you want to narrow it, you can do that. You can also try different kinds of search techniques. So if you have problems with that, I can help you, okay, in trying to find some. You can Google for some of your articles, but if you use that as your primary way, you're not going to find good quality. You need to find 2 peer-reviewed journals, which is where you find here. This also has New York Times, Time Magazine, Huffington Post, USA Today, just some regular kind of, newspapers and magazines, but it also has academic journals, periodicals, reports, things like that. So I would do both and just try to see if you can get the best that you can. Okay. So the homework is going to be to read the assigned Whistling Vivaldi chapter, and I can give that to you by Monday. And note the connections to racial profiling in the section that you have, if you can find any that would come up with the idea of the interaction of racial profiling. Choose a type of racial profiling and a case, and start gathering your sources. So that's your homework. Okay, if you have questions, let me know. Thanks.